What's up, crypto gang? Welcome back to another episode of Hack Crypto, where we hack our cryptocurrency education. And if you guys are brand new here, we do a giveaway at the beginning of every single episode. And today's winner is Ravina Roy. Thanks so much for commenting on the previous video, Ravina. I just sent you some crypto. On this episode, I sit down with Tommy, the CEO of Wiv. So Wiv has essentially tokenized fine wine, and they're going after different luxury goods in the future. But specifically right now, they have created NFTs on the marketplace OpenSea that you guys are probably familiar with. I've done a few videos on in the past, and we've been working with them at Grow Your Base for a couple of months now. It's very exciting because fine wine is a luxury across the world to store value in. So without further ado, let's dive into my interview with Tommy, the CEO of Wiv, so he can do a better job explaining exactly what it means to tokenize luxury items and fine wines. What's up, guys? I am here with Tommy, the CEO and co-founder of Wiv. How's it going, Tommy?
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. Very good.
Yeah, excellent. So I'm really excited to get you on the show because this is one of those examples where this asset class, investing in wine, is such an interesting asset class. And it's something that traditionally elite, very top tier investors, very wealthy people would invest in. And now with blockchain technology, it's opening the floodgates for people. So before we dive into what Wiv is, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to create Wiv?
Yeah, sure. So my background has always been technology. I've been, co-founding probably 5-6 tech companies over the past 25 years. Being based in London for around 16 years before I moved back to my native country, Norway, a couple of years ago. But I've been working on building disruptive technologies for the past 20 years, and have been in operational commercial with the companies I've been involved with, but I've always had a very strong emphasis on the technology, as I'm a programmer by default. So, but I don't know anything at all now, but I know enough to understand technology company, how we build them, and what we need to scale. So that's pretty much been my background. I've over the past 5 or 10 years, I spent a lot of time with prior family offices in London, working with a lot of wealthy individuals, and at that time I also came across a lot of the wine investment community in London, and especially on the financial side for collateral lending on wine as well. So kind of had a first-hand experience on that very early on, and that's also one of the reasons why we started Viv, because what we saw is that we come from a tech background where we like everything digital, and we saw that wine was so archaic in how they were operating, and how they were trading. Everything was on human trust, and we saw that it needed immediately, needed some kind of digital stamp on it, some kind of, where people could trust, have a more kind of trusted party in the trade. And that's very much kind of the beginning of it, what we wanted to kind of create out of it. It's about creating the security in the trade there, so that anyone can go and buy investment wine. You don't need to be wealthy, and you don't need to be extremely knowledgeable about it, which was the case before. And it was a very high ticket price to start investing into wine previously. And that's something with our technology is, it's improved a lot, and you can buy a case of wine for a couple of, $100, and you are officially a wine investor.
That's awesome. So, in terms of how it works, I know that you guys have structured it as an NFT. Is that right? Instead of like a security style token?
Yes. Yeah, so we use so very early on in our development, we saw that the this is the beginning when ERC 721 was created as a standard, and we started building and developing around the ERC 721 and then creating the NFT. So for us, is that every case of wine is there is a token attached to it. So we have a lot of wine that's been tokenized from both from the birth and also very early on. And when they go out in the market, they might have been tokenized for a longer times.
Awesome. And just for everybody that's listening that has never heard of wine as an asset class, can you just kind of school us on what are traditional returns? Like if I went to a wine cellar and bought some wine, what would I expect in terms of historically with when it was only, human trust based, which I find fascinating that has existed all the way up till now. And what would that look like traditionally?
Well, it's traditionally you had different place. I mean, you still have the same place in the market today as you had before, but it's been kind of, and for many cases, the same guys who kind of is buying and selling wine has been existing for 100 to 200 years, family-owned enterprises. Um, but in general, you needed to you need to invest quite a lot of money into different wine over time. There's a lot of work around allocation. So the thing is that you can't just go and buy anything you want to do. You have to be kind of allocated a certain case of wine from that winery for the next 20 years. Um, and and you would rather kind of you would rather than not pay your mortgage, but actually you would pay your wine because you needed that and you need that for the next couple of years. So that's kind of the old school system. Still exists in some capacity, and but it's just purely on based on trust. And you also, the other problem you have is that over time you would have it in a private cellar, you have it in your private storage facility. That could be your home, it could be somewhere else. That's not always the best premise to store your wine, because there are many things that can happen. You can have flooding, can have different temperature variation that tampers the wine, and then you also have the big element when it comes to wine. You have a massive element of fraud. Everyone knows about Rudy Carnavin when he frauded quite a lot of auction houses and wine investors. And what happens when it's in that cellar? You have no control of it. You don't know anything about the history. You know nothing about the wine. So for all you know, you can replace that with some replica of wine and then put it back on the market. So what we see now is the influx of storage facilities, so third party secure storage facility that are rightly temperature, and where wine investors put their case of wine in those premises. It's like a vault, just like any kind of vault where you store your commodities
Mm-hmm.
for safekeeping. And especially for wine, it's very good because the the price will then keep quite stable. It will probably increase some of it when you try to sell it, because provenance is something that's is very important for wine when you're selling it. So they know that you have a history on that
Mm-hmm.
wine, so you know where it comes from. And also typically wine has had is one of the top assets classes who had the best return when you look at the 5 to 10 years. So I think the 10 years return for wine is around between 250 and 300%,
Whoa.
which is really great. So for a lot of people, it's quite good in terms of the return down. If you're looking to invest into wine to make short-term, returns, they're not the greatest assets, because they need a few years to mature. So, but when you get up to a certain point, the growth on the wine is phenomenal
Yeah,
compared to the other classes. So
that sounds like pretty incredible returns.
yeah,
And this
and
coming from me, I've never invested in wine. I remember researching it years ago, just because I was interested in how, store of value is used in all different formats over, hundreds of years. And I think wine makes perfect sense in that people were storing their value in it. In terms of the liquidity, traditionally, what was it in terms of like if I wanted to sell it, my case that I bought, and then how how you guys are operating now? What does that look like? The difference there?
yeah. So previously, it could take you up to 6 weeks to transact a case of wine. And as we said, that also when you transact wine in the old system, which still many people do, there's a high probability that you could lose your wine and your money, or both. So because you have rogue elements in the industry, and you have other elements that you could end up with losing all of it. It used to be a quite manual process where you had to kind of check manually the wine before you bought it, because you need to know that it was the real deal. But with our system, it happens almost instantly. It's stored in a storage facility. We don't move the wine, and again, that's good for the wine because wine doesn't like to travel. So it stays in the same premise. We just changed the smart contract on the ownership of it, and it stays in the same place, doesn't move. We have verified that it is the wine it is, and where it comes from. So it has a kind of a perfect history of where the wine comes from. So
Nice.
that's so that's so that's the easy part in terms of what we do.
So my dad is actually in real estate, like luxury real estate, where they sell in Florida,
Mm.
like beachfront properties and things like that. And I'm always interested in what they track in terms of areas where wealth is gaining momentum or picking up
Mm.
momentum. And one of the things that they do is they track sales of watches in local areas, because that's an indicator that wealth is moving towards a certain direction in which real estate would be more valuable to them. So
Right.
in terms of what you guys are doing now, I know you're tokenizing wine. What's coming with what you guys are working on in terms of like luxury goods? What's coming for what you guys are going to do?
Yeah, so what we do is that wine is a kind of our first asset class we do, and what we always say is that so Viv is about tokenizing unique assets, and that's basically is doing any kind of physical assets, and we tend to like, because our model with the wine, it works very well on the luxury, on the high end markets. So it can be whiskey and spirits because of the close relationship it has with wine.
Mm.
Uh, and then you also have watches. And then you have kind of anything that's a kind of luxury item, um, where we can do that. The element where we look at is looking at the financial play we could use the assets for. So if there's anything we can collateralize, and then, where we can provide either a loan or a credit card based on those assets, and have those assets as a good security, we can do that. We're also looking at different kind of financial models in terms of financing.
Hmm.
So if you are a producer, or if you are a trader, or a collector, you can use those assets in order to raise capital or raise working capital as well. So that's something we also look at in terms of going beyond that part in terms of decentralized finance.
Yeah, very cool. And in terms of the team, how big is the team? Are you guys distributed? Where are you guys based?
Yeah, so we are a very kind of nimble team. We built the technology with the help of Ernst & Young. So EY, their blockchain team, helped us building part of the platform. So we have around, in Norway, we're around 4 people, and they are primarily developers and the management team. Then we have a team in London. We also have a team in Singapore, and then also in Hong Kong.
Got
So
it.
but that's so, but and then the technology side is the most important one, and that's what we are emphasis the most on. And then we also have a very strong kind of commercial and financial team.
Got it.
So that, yeah.
And I saw you guys are on OpenSea. You guys are actively trading on there. What's that experience been like in terms of traction wise? Are you guys seeing a good response from the collectors on OpenSea?
Yeah, it's been great because I mean it's the first kind of real world assets on OpenSea, and it's probably to our surprise, it's actually one of the first kind of real world assets being traded as an NFT. So that's been a great experience, a great kind of learning curve for us to do that. It's been fantastic. We got a lot of feedback. We'd had guys buying the NFT wine, and contacting us in terms of, we had conference calls with a lot of our buyers actually, because they wanted to kind of learn more about what we do and how we do it, and also give them they give their kind of experience and feedback on what we do. So it's been a great learning curve in terms of that. We listed probably wine from $100 for the cheapest one. I think actually $90 for the cheapest case of wine, and the most expensive one was $4,000.
Wow.
And I think the most expensive one we sold was around $1,600. So yeah, so it's been good learning curve, and definitely in that, and we are still developing that channel for us as well.
That's exciting. So from a noob perspective, when I'm looking at wine, what should I be looking for? Like what's the kind of indicator? Because I lived in San Francisco for 5 years or so before my wife and I moved to Florida, and we would go to Sonoma, Calistoga, Napa, and check out the wineries there. And the concept of like, drink what tastes good. I think that is different than this slightly, because you're looking at kind of the track record, like you said, is what has this been bought and sold for previously, and you're kind of drawing a graph in a way of saying like this is going to continue to increase in value. And I love that aspect of it. It's like applying data to wine. So what would I be looking for as a brand new investor coming into something like this?
Well, I think it depends your appetite, but Bordeaux and France is always kind of the first one you look at, and then you have 10 of the top 10 chateaus in France, and they are always kind of a safe investment, but they are quite expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to, do you want to focus on a single region at the high end? It means that you have to put a bit more cash on it, maybe lower growth, but less volatile, because it's a safe investment. And primarily in a very kind of strong market, they keep the prices very good.
Cool.
Or you can go diversified, and that's, Italy has been very, very strong lately, and you have Burgundy and you have Spain. And if you do a diversified, and there you can do really well growth, because when you have like a $200 case, you can easily, double or triple in value over the next years. Where you have with a top chateau, it will only kind of go between 10 to 70%. So this is kind of different in the ways, and then it's just about finding the right ones that you like, and sometimes it's up to what you like. So it could be a certain wine that you have tasted on a holiday in Italy,
Hmm.
and you buy that because you have some kind of relationship to that. And or you could just you buy wine on on your kid's birth year. So it's like to do like a special occasion where you buy a certain wine with 2013 or 15, because that's when your kid was born. So it's kind of it's kind of a cool thing to do, and that's something that a lot of people do, is that they buy a very special wine, and historically that's been done with the best wine investors. They started with buying like Lafite, Rothschild Lafite, with the birth year of the kid, and then keeping it for 18 years, and then when the kid is 18 years old, you get a Lafite when he was born, and probably the value of that wine is quite high.
Yeah.
um, so it's a good investment for any kind of dad giving his kid,
Yeah. Very cool. Like the birth year.
Yeah,
That's very clever. Very clever. As like an
exactly.
adult gift at 18. Here's a a case of wine worth 20 grand, you know?
Yeah, it is. So, and I think you will see that a lot more. That, I mean, people don't buy wine as for you to drink it, but give it as a, instead of actually giving you a fund or money, they actually rather buy you a very fine wine that you can appreciate the value of it, and then keeping it, and then learning more about it. So it's also a very good educational
Yeah.
uh, part of it. So it's good.
Yeah. That's exciting because it's like it has these built-in attributes that I didn't even really think about. The geography, the type of wine, the actual winery that is being or that's producing it. You have the year. You have all of these different attributes that are included in it. And I did a collectible series a while back, and a lot of these attributes are just kind of created out of thin air just because they want to have different rarities and apply some scarcity to different attributes. And this one is like baked in, which is really cool to see that. In terms of how you guys approach the sellers, I guess would be the terminology there. But are you partnering with the sellers and then getting you're doing the tokenization for them? Like it's directly connected to those sellers, or do you guys store the wine for your investors? How does that work?
No, most of our clients are the players in the ecosystem. So that be traders or wine asset management companies.
Okay.
And what we do there is that we tokenize their wine. So they are. So we have a kind of almost like a software as a service solution, platform solution
Hmm.
that allows you to tokenize the wine.
Got
Uh, so that's what we do, and then they offer that to their clients. So in general, the wine investor would be the client of our clients.
got it.
So,
Got it.
yeah.
Cool. Thanks for
Unless if you're buying from OpenSea, you kind of you I mean, the stock we list on OpenSea is coming from our clients, but we kind of manage that for them in terms of on OpenSea. So that's the only kind of time we have a direct relationship with a wine investor.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome, Tommy. Well, I love this asset class. I love when alternative asset classes come out of the woodwork and people can learn about them. Like the average person can get access to them. And this is a fascinating and very cool project. So, where can people find out more about WIV, and where do you want people to go and research?
Yeah, so the best way to do that is go on our website, viv.io, so WIV.io. And you can also go on our Medium page, where we have a lot of articles. It's a lot of educational material we have on our Medium account. And of course, OpenSea. We have some fantastic wine you can buy on OpenSea. And you can start trading wine now. So that's a fantastic opportunity for anyone who wants to kind of learn a bit more about wine and also what we do.
Awesome. Well, everybody that's listening in, if you're listening in on the podcast, all the links will be in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, the links will be in the description to the OpenSea as well as the website. But thanks so much for coming on the show, Tommy. This is really exciting.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's been a great time. Thank you.
That is it for my interview with Tommy, the CEO and founder of WIV. If you guys like it, slap a like. It definitely helps the channel. Definitely check out WIV with the links in the description below. Also, sign up for Grow Your Base for a chance to earn some of these awesome NFTs. And that is it for this episode. And I hope to see you guys on the next episode of Hack Crypto.